In my world there is music and good vibes and laughter and lovers, adventure and friendship. We know who we are.
Hello and welcome everybody to Be the Wellness Podcast. Adam and Vanessa Lambert back at it again.
Yes.
In Podcast Central.
For the millionth week in a row.
The millionth.
The 1 millionth week.
How many weeks is it?
Oh, who
honestly?
knows? Who knows?
Well, there's 52 weeks in a year.
Well, actually, we're on episode 1. This is 137, I think, or 136?
137.
137. So it would be 137 weeks, right?
Yeah. But there's also like the in-between episodes. Oh. And then still, you know what? Nobody still has like come forward to identify what number we skipped. Remember back in the day?
Oh.
Somebody needs to do some research.
Somebody needs to care more.
Somebody should care more. I'm telling you. Or if you do care and you just, forgot to mention it somewhere, what you could do is go and leave us a 5-star review. And in that review say, you guys are awesome, but you skipped episode that.
There you go.
Yeah.
Or you could just say, you guys are awesome and I care.
Well, that's true too.
And if you care, you could also come over and get this splinter out of my hand because it really hurts.
You're festering?
Yeah. Why are splinters like the worst thing that ever happened? They're like, it's like a hangnail. It's like the smallest little thing, but it creates such a nuisance.
In your life?
In your life, yeah.
Well, especially because that's from the deck, right? So that's redwood.
Yeah.
And redwood splinters are extra bad because of the tannins in the redwood.
Oh, yeah. It's really bugging me.
Dude, it's the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember one time building a deck and got, this is going to tie in nicely with your hangnail piece.
Oh, perfect.
I got a splinter underneath the corner, a redwood splinter underneath the corner of my fingernail.
Oh, no, it's like a double whammy.
Yeah. So it went straight in under my fingernail and like, dude, that was pure misery for a long time.
Ew.
And it ended up like festering and creating this thing, and I had to get a needle super, super hot and push it through my fingernail to drain it.
Wait, you did this on your own?
Yeah. What are you going to do?
Adam was raised by wolves. I just want to remind the audience that there was no supervision in his life ever.
No, this is anybody who's ever done construction and has like smashed a finger and gotten a blood blister under it or gotten something festered. Like,
oh yeah, actually, I have done that, but I had a doctor do it.
Yeah. So you get it super hot, and you can actually use a drill bit, but that seems super sketchy. So like the needle always made more sense to me, and you can just kind of through there, and then
the doctor has like a little cottering device, like it's a little tiny like welding machine.
Well, but at the end of the day, it's a super hot piece of metal.
Yeah, exactly.
And like you can 100% manufacture your own super hot piece of metal without having to go enlist the help of a
certified
witch doctor.
technician.
Yeah. So the general trick is you get it super hot, and you can also use a bobby pin. Bobby pin? No, safety pin. Not a bobby pin.
Yeah,
that'd have to be real hot. That'd be like a big hole. Safety pin, poke it in there, lance it, and then you just wrap it in duct tape. Or electrical tape. Electrical tape's actually better.
Oh, perfect. Awesome.
It stretches. Yeah.
So, medical home tips from our house to yours.
Yeah. This is what's up.
You'll never need a doctor again.
No. Yeah. And actually, while we're on this subject, Marjo, my stepmom, who will be at B-Fest, will remember this because she may have actually purchased the book. I don't remember now. But we had a book in our house called Where There Is No Dentist. And it was like, some like legitimate tips on how to deal with your teeth if something happens where like you can't go to a dentist.
Oh my gosh.
And it included like all of this stuff. And it was all like, if I remember correctly in the book, like you flip through the pages and it was like they were somewhere deep in Africa,
Okay, yeah.
And it was some, I don't know, like guide for this kind of stuff.
So if you're in Ghana or Kovalo, where you grew up.
Yeah. It may be necessary to
maybe even Lake County, where I grew up, actually.
Yeah. Well, there's less teeth there. So
that's true. It's not as big of a
deal. They
deal.
needed the book a long time ago. Yeah.
Nice. That was well played.
Yeah.
So we have a cool episode today. We've been really enjoying having some just, question and answer episodes again with Adam and I. And, we love having guests as well. But sometimes it's fun just to kind of take it back to what we're doing and, the health and wellness aspect of this show and kind of just reconnect with those things and, coaching people and sharing best practices and all that good stuff. So we thought we would do another Q&A today. We've got some more good questions coming in. And, we sometimes get a little complacent, or I don't know if complacent is the right word, but we kind of just think that, we've already talked about something at one point, so everyone must know that because we said it once.
Right.
And I think that what you realize is that oftentimes, not only do you have to hear things over and over for it to really sink in, but, the audience is always changing. We're always having new people that are listening and checking in. So it's good to just kind of go back through some of the basics and some of the things that make a big difference in our lives and that we've seen make a difference for other people.
Yeah. Yeah, and we recognize that probably not everybody listens to every episode.
Yeah. And not everybody implements everything we say on the first time. As much as in a perfect world, we're like, we said it, now go.
No, yes, it's been done. What else do you want from me?
I said it once. What else do you need from me? So yeah, we're just kind of reminding ourselves that it's good to just check back in and, share just some of the knowledge and expertise that we've garnered over the years and that we've seen people garner, and things that make people have, real turnarounds in their wellness.
In their garnership.
In their garnership, yes. That sounds like
their garneracity.
It sounds like a heart rate monitor.
Garnership?
A garnership. Yeah. I don't know why.
I don't know either. But that's, yeah, I mean, I could get behind that.
Okay, cool. So someone was asking us about what our daily rituals are.
Yeah.
And, this actually, we hear about daily rituals all the time. And, you kind of need to find the rituals that make the biggest difference for you. And we are super big on these and actually have a pretty staunch practice around what we do in the morning and daily, and even what we do when a certain scenario arises. So by that, I mean, if we, find ourselves feeling stressed or overwhelmed or, in a moment of nervousness, like what do we do in that moment? What's our ritual for that moment? So we thought today we would just share with you some of our top rituals, some of the things that we like to implement on a daily basis, and then also just situationally.
Go.
Right?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, I'll
Yeah.
start because honestly, obviously with the meditation challenge and with my commitment to meditation in our community, it is absolutely my number one daily ritual. And I can say with total certainty that it's completely changed my life. It's really shifted the way that I relate to the world around me. And, it's not that every day I have some huge epiphany or, I have like this enlightened moment every morning when I do my 10-minute meditation. But what it does is it sets the tone. It sets the energetic sort of vibration of how I'm going to work into my day. And so for me, every single morning, and Adam can attest to this because I stumble out of bed, I turn the coffee maker on, I grab my headphones, and I listen to first the 5-minute affirmation in Authentic Self, which is our year-long personal development program that I coach. There's a 5-minute or 6-minute, depending on which quarter we're in, affirmation. I listen to that right away. And then I roll straight into the 10-minute guided meditation that's also in Authentic Self. And sometimes I also do the guided meditation that's in Unveil Your Wellness, that's in the meditation challenge. And then recently I've added a 10-minute money manifestation guided meditation as well. So I literally spend the first 25 minutes of my day drinking coffee and getting my mind right.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's pretty important. And I think it was, who was it? It was somebody we had on the podcast that talked about that. And he said something, it was Luke Story. And he said, he's like, I just have to do something to set my mindset before my mind takes a hold in the morning.
Exactly.
And that's I think it's a really
Yes.
interesting way of looking at it, man, because everybody's had that day where you wake up in the morning and like, the very first thing you're like, oh, it's so nice to be awake. And then the day of everything that has to happen floods in.
Totally.
And it's just like this immediate, oh man. And now you're set up to be sort of reacting to whatever was going on maybe the day before or whatever it is you have coming that's, stressful or whatever it is. And so just being able to like drive a wedge in there and get your head straight and mindfully move forward into the things you have to do for the day is like, is pretty important.
It's 100% true. And honestly, like, you know, obviously there have been a few days here and there that I've skipped, and there's a marked difference in the way that my day unfolds. And it's usually way higher stress. I'm way less grounded. I'm way more apt to let a negative thought or worry seed itself more deeply and have a harder time combating it.
Right.
Like I have a harder time shaking it. I just, you know, it just doesn't, it's not as easy for me to move past it or do something to sort of negate that experience. Yeah. And so that's exactly it, because when you wake up, obviously thoughts are going to start rushing in, because that's just how the mind works. Everything just turns on. You know, what do I have to do today? Where do I have to be? Blah, blah, blah. All that stuff just starts flooding in. And if you don't catch it right away and kind of try to control at least what thoughts or what things are coming in. And for me, it's been more effective to have guided meditation, because it actually is feeding me the thoughts and the words and the things that I want to think about, rather than trying to sit quietly and stave off those thoughts. I do love silent meditation, and I often will do that as an addition or as sort of a bonus whenever I need to. But I have found that the guided meditation is more beneficial because it actually gives my mind some direction, some positive direction and influence right away.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important thing as well, is that it's whatever's going to work best for you in that moment, you know what I mean, to generate that gap.
Yes.
And for me, it's because I experienced the same thing, and there's no doubt that's a huge piece, and it's something I've been reflecting on a lot since, like, literally yesterday was my last day at work, you know, in my fire job.
Congratulations.
Yay.
Yay.
And it's which to be perfectly honest, like, as it's becoming more and more real, it's getting weirder and weirder that,
of course,
you know, it's like how much of my life was kind of wrapped up in doing this thing for the last 22 years.
Of course, yeah.
It's like, who does anything for 22 years? You know, it's like some people go to school for 22 years.
Yes.
You know what I mean? From, like, if you count kindergarten through their doctorate program.
Right.
You know?
Yes. Yeah.
People are married for that long. Some of them.
Yeah, we're creeping up there.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and then there's careers, right, that people do for that long, and it's really interesting to think about the differences between that career, which it's like it's all encompassing. You know what I mean? You can't not be there in that job. Like, it requires 100% of you while you're there, and about 75% of you while you're not there. You know, because it's just part of the deal. You know, so I mean, the only other thing that I really have to compare it to is, you know, the job that I had growing up, which was always working construction. You know, I mean, and that job required 100% of you for 8 hours out of the day, and then you go home. You know, and I mean, it's a little different as you get up. You know, and now you're like my dad. I think about working with him when he was the superintendent of a project or whatever. I mean, he, you know, obviously his mind was working on things at night while he was, you know, not at work. So I mean, there's obviously some level of carryover, but there's a commitment to that kind of job and being in the fire service that I think is like, it's just different. You know, I mean, you're all in. You know.
Well, and it's such an identity, you know, that's the other thing, is it like, yeah, you're all in, and not only is it all of your time and your mental RAM to, like, do what is there to be done for the job, but it's your identity, and it's this sense of who you are in the world and how people relate to you. And so half of your life, half of your world has been people seeing you as that person. So, like, now that, you know, those people, you probably won't see most of them regularly. Like, it leaves a whole gap of space for, like, new identity and for people to come in and fill in who you are to them. Yeah.
And which is interesting, because I mean, this is something that we've talked about before, and it's like, fundamentally who you are is manifest of the language that the people around you feed back. Right. I mean, how else do you know who you are? I mean, it's so much of it is a reflective experience of the people around you.
Sure.
That to all of a sudden take away 70% of the people in my life that provide feedback you know, and like they provide this feedback, just like you're saying, of like, well, no, you're the chief.
Right.
That's who you are. You know what I mean?
And then now you're here, and I'm like, you're not in charge. You're like, uh-oh.
Like, oh shit.
Oh shit.
Who am I in charge of? Daisy.
Daisy.
I'm definitely
You
in
got
charge
Daisy.
of Daisy. But so it's interesting. You know, it's been an interesting thing to kind of come through. And I guess where I'm going with this is that and what I'm recognizing is that I've had two entirely separate daily routines or morning rituals.
Yes.
You know, and one which is 100% within my control and one that is not.
Right.
You know, and so it's something that, and I think this question came up the other day in Unveil Your Wellness was, hey, what's your morning routine? And I'm like, I don't have one. It's like, it's too all over the place. Like I have a few things that I like to check off the list, but I'm really looking forward to like developing, you know, an actual morning routine.
Yeah.
But the things that I've done, like on the days where everything works out, you know, and I don't get woken up to somebody else's emergency, you know, which it's fine. That's what I was being paid to do.
That's cool. That's what I'm
there to do, you know.
Yeah.
But my real anchor in the morning is exercise.
Yeah.
You know, and so I would get up, you know, right about the time the sun comes up usually, and go. And where I was most recently working, I've actually been pretty fortunate. I've been able to have a pretty solid gym everywhere that I work. I mean, it's just part of my. It's one of my non-negotiables.
Yeah.
I gotta have a good gym.
Get to, yeah.
And so anyway, I've been training at the air base, which is where all of our firefighting aircraft live. It's an airport, you know, a typical airport, but with a whole bunch of cool stuff there. And we have a really sweet gym there. And I get there early enough, you know, the aviation side of things, they don't start. They can only fly for so many hours, so they don't come on until later in the day because they need to be able to fly in the afternoons when most of the fires occur, right? So they don't come on super early. So I'd have that whole place to myself, you know, and so I can put on my music and I can go in and just work through my workout and have that's my day.
Your
you know,
space,
I mean, that sets the whole thing up. I can grind through whatever's going on in my head. And by the time I leave, it's like a fresh day. And then I go back to my office and get bombarded by all the shenanigans and all the things that come along with the job. So that was really my thing, was just anchored in this physical activity in the morning. And I do breathing resets and stuff with like the PRI method breathing stuff. And that really makes a big difference. Like it's something that I think Wim Hof actually said it. He's like, change your physiology, change your mind. It's like you just need to do something to shift what's going on. And whether it's breathing or a combination of breathing in ice cold water or, you know, like whatever the thing is, change your physiology, change your mind. And I think that really resonates with me, you know, and I think that the opposite is also possible. So you can like change your mind and change your physiology. And so I don't necessarily know if it matters which one you kind of go for, you know?
Yeah, well, I think it depends on you. I think this is why you have to know yourself and know. So some people, they're like, oh, I'm feeling stressed. I'm going to go grab a quick workout because I know that's the fastest way to changing my state of being. Some people, when they're in that state of stress, they can't even get themselves to move, let alone feel motivated to work out. So then you need to know, okay, well, for me, I might be the kind of person that literally just needs to put my headphones on, listen to a guided meditation, or listen to something that just starts to shift me because when I'm stressed, I'm frozen in my body. So working out isn't an option. So I think this is where it's so variable and important for people to identify what is the thing for you that you can do. Because my thing is going to be different than your thing. And Adam's thing is going to be different than my thing. So it's just like, you know, I think that's why it's so important to have this arsenal of things for you.
Yeah, totally. And this is something that we've actually, we haven't really talked about this, but it's kind of happened for the two of us, is that we've sort of just intuitively recognized that it's not the same thing for us. And I think we used to try, well, let's have our quiet morning together and let's try to do these things together. And at the end of the day, we're different in the way that we operate. So it's like we have there's this unspoken 2 hours, you know, or like nothing happens, you know, we don't do anything. We're separate and doing our own things in the morning.
Totally.
And I think that's a smart way to approach it, because it is fundamentally going to be different for everybody and how they want to ramp up for their day.
Sure. The
important thing being that you establish some kind of a routine.
Yes.
You know, I'm more and more confident that, And actually, some of the science is starting to kind of show up this way, and in the stuff that's being done around circadian rhythm, the things that are being done around blue light, the effects of blue light at night. Obviously, the opposite of that is also true in the morning, right? So like this idea of limiting blue light at night, it has a exact opposite in getting as much blue light as possible in the morning, right? So it's this differentiation of daytime, nighttime,
right.
And there's this tendency, especially in the winter months. I mean, we're pretty lucky here, but especially in the winter months, for people to not spend that much time outside. And so if you think about the light exposure that people are getting inside, even if you've got the brightest lights in the world inside, it's still just a fraction of what you would get outside. And so it's incredibly important to get that unfiltered light, first thing in the morning, so that at night, now there's a disparity when you shut everything down, right? And so I think that we're seeing kind of the same things materialize around your routine. And in our sleep stuff, we always talk about having this nighttime routine. How do you wind down? Well, this is the exact same thing on the other side. How do you wind up?
Totally.
And what goes on from a physiology perspective is that you get the cortisol awakening response, right? So you get and usually right about the time the sun comes up, depending on if you're totally jacked up in your circadian rhythm or not, you get this spike in cortisol that wakes you up. Like this is what happens, right? And so cortisol does all sorts of good things, but if you're chronically stressed, and your reaction to cortisol is mostly cold sweat and to start thinking and worrying about what else is coming. Because this is the thing about worry and the way that our brains work. It's a feed forward mechanism. So if you worry about something, then your cortisol becomes even more amped, and then you're like, wow, there is something to worry about. Like your body, the physiology is like, well, wait a second, I'm clearly in danger. So now I'm validated in my worrying, right? Does that make sense? So if there's this cortisol spike that comes in the morning to just literally wake you up and give you the energy to get going and go out and find food, which was what it was designed for, can initiate this feed forward loop of shenanigans in your brain of like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And then you drink some coffee and, it's really hard for the body to tell the difference between like excitement and anxiety. They're all these like elevated things. So
right.
This is something that we've just got to start working in, is this morning routine equally as important as our nighttime routine to keep everything running correctly,
Absolutely. And it's good that you actually brought up the point about not having the same day every day and, and not really in a perfect world, you'd have this routine, but that didn't really transpire for you because a lot of people out there are dealing with that.
Right.
Maybe they're not responding necessarily to an emergency situation, but a lot of people have, hey, this morning I have a super early morning meeting and
right.
I only have an hour to get to my office or whatever
right.
it is. And, it's interesting because this is something that we talked about with Jason Ferrugia on Renegade Radio. And, especially for fire service or shift workers, this is a reality that like optimized is just kind of meh. Yeah. Like it's never that great. And,
right.
It's not to like rain on anyone's parade or be mean about it, but it's just like, this is one of the reasons that Adam actually got really serious about leaving the fire service was that
right.
he just recognized that he was never going to have the opportunity to be totally optimized with that commitment in his life. And, this is another reason why, if that is your lifestyle, if there's something, a job, a relationship, whatever, that is actually preventing you from ever getting to that place where you can optimize, we just really encourage people to start looking for possible other ways to be in life,
right.
because you really do limit your ability to maximize your experience if you have these things that just literally are hard stops in your process.
Right.
And obviously everyone has to work, everyone has to survive, and, there's a lot of moving parts. But, when you're thinking about your life and you're trying to look ahead and create your life in a way that is in alignment with your highest possibility, your health and your well-being is so important. It's so critical to that. So as you're making career decisions, as you're looking for other job opportunities, like it's so important to consider these things.
Yeah.
And maybe even be a catalyst within your workplace. Maybe be an advocate for initiating some of these changes. We were just talking with Ben McMaster, who was here on the podcast a few weeks, and he was talking about in LA, no one starts work till 10.
Right.
Like it's just an acceptable way of being here because we are so focused as a community on our well-being, and the powers that be within the workplace have recognized that they have much more productive, happy, long-lasting employees if they give them those couple hours in the morning to do all these things we're talking about. So it's just one of those things when you listen to this and you're like, well, that's nice because you guys work from home and you can do what you want. Start thinking about being the change in your community to maybe create some of this space, because it really will pay in dividends for yourself, but also for your workplace.
Yeah, totally. And the thing is that the study after study after study, all of the evidence is showing up across the board for the increased productivity that comes along with increased flexibility, right? So as the more flexible things are, the more productive people are going to be. And it's, boy, we could really go off on a tangent on this, but it's like from a manager's perspective and a management perspective, you really have to look at your measurables and do the work to understand what productivity actually looks like in whatever your field is. Because if you don't do it, then like the lazy man's productivity measure is how many hours you work today, or how many widgets did you produce, and which those two things often are parallel, right? You were here for more hours, so you produced more widgets, but how high were the quality of those widgets? How much else could you have done? How many widgets could you do if you were here for less time and you knew that you were going to be able to go do something else? Yeah. So there's a lot of variables that go into that stuff. And there was a study, well, shoot, it's probably been a year ago now, but it's out there on school start times. So and the productivity and attention span of children and when their schools start, whether they start at like 8 a.m. or if they start at 10 a.m.
Right.
And it's dramatically different.
Oh, yeah.
So the later you push back the start time, the more productive the kids are, the less shenanigans you run into at school. And, it's there.
Totally.
We're just sort of locked in this structure that, it's the Industrial Revolution structure.
Yeah,
what I mean? It's like the whistle blows at 7 a.m. and you work until the whistle blows again. And that's how our schools are set up to start to
indoctrinate people.
Yeah, and this can sound a little tinfoil hattish, they're indoctrinating us into the cog in the wheel and the machine and yada, yada, yada. And it's like, it doesn't have to be a negative, you know what I mean? I don't think anybody was like, we're going to really turn these people into hard workers.
Yeah.
No, but it's just part of the system. This is just how it's developed and it's gotten us where we are today. But fortunately, in what is fundamentally becoming more and more of a knowledge economy, it gives us room to do that. We're not producing that many widgets,
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I think going with that.
I think it's just good to acknowledge, because obviously, I have the flexibility because I don't mind working till 7 or 8 at night. And I don't mind pushing my day back, because I know that if I take the first couple hours of my day and I really, really set the tone for my total well-being, what I'm going to produce, the output that I'm going to give in my own life is going to be so much more powerful, and it's going to have such a greater response than if I'm doing something from this place of stress or tiredness or whatever it is. It's just not going to work as well. So for me, meditation is it's a non-negotiable for me first thing in the morning. And then I work out. So, obviously I try to stack as many things as I can. I front load as many positive things into the front of my day, because I know myself and I know life. It gets away from you. And by the end of the day, if you're trying to still get in your workout, you're trying to still meditate, you're trying to do all these things that you intended to do for the day, when you're tired, the sun's going down, and you just kind of lose your momentum, the likelihood of it just decreases. So meditation and workout. And then one thing that I've added in just recently is actually doing the hot cold plunge in the shower, just trying to change my physiology.
Phew.
Yeah.
A little epinephrine rush.
Yeah, which it just really, really works. I mean, that's the bottom line, is that if I am, especially if I'm feeling any kind of groggy or any kind of irritated or any kind of anything, you flush through cold and hot for even just 3 cycles, and it's a brand new day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and Rhonda Patrick has talked about this a lot, but that norepinephrine manipulation is massive.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, and this is something that, it's not even a new drug class, but I mean, when you talk about most people, if you talk about antidepressants and stuff like that, they think about SSRIs or MAOIs, right? Things that are working on like a global scale of reducing the breakdown of neurotransmitters or specifically serotonin, right? But then there's the whole NDRIs, right? Or the norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors. And it's massive. I mean, norepinephrine is a huge deal in your brain. It completely changes the way that you're looking at things. So I would, yeah.
Yeah,
cool.
it truly changes the way you relate to your world. And that's the thing I find myself really realizing with all of these things is that I'm relating to my human experience completely different than when I don't do these things.
Right.
When I don't do these things, I kind of fall to the lowest common denominator. So taking that time is just so important to just set yourself up for success and, just do the things that are going to attract what you want to attract into your life.
100%.
Yes.
Instead of just allowing things to flood in and then being reactive and
Yes.
being like, I don't know why my life's crazy.
Exactly. Yeah. Which, this is one of the things about coaching authentic self is that, you really realize that people start to have a greater awareness for what they're calling in and how they're relating to things. And I think that, it's a practice, and this is part of that practice is like actually looking at how you respond to the things in your life, looking at your physical state, your emotional state, and being aware enough that when the state is not in alignment with what it is you're trying to create, that you have some tools to implement to shift that energy and to get back in alignment with what you're trying to create.
Bam.
Bam. Yes.
So let's talk about that piece next. This piece of what to do, like what are these routines that you have when things get off track?
Yeah.
Right.
So for me, okay, I talked about the essential oils, the essential oils and just, affecting your senses. We talked about that earlier, just kind of attacking one of your senses to really shift what's there for you. But another thing that I've been doing recently, which has really been helping, is actually physically writing pen to paper affirmations. So, and I can't really remember. There was a TED Talk, and I think it might even be a TED Talk that I have in my Authentic Self course, or I don't know, I've watched it before at some point. And it's about the connection between your brain and actually writing and how that changes the brain chemistry. It changes some of the neural pathways and what's happening from an actual neurological standpoint in your brain. And it's one of the reasons why it's concerning that we're getting away from actually teaching kids how to write, how to do handwriting, because there's supposed to be certain parts of the brain that are activated from actually writing. And so I don't know, obviously I can't cite any studies or like what that connection is, but I definitely feel anecdotally when I start writing affirmations, I start writing positive intentions, that my consciousness and my subconsciousness are starting to fall in alignment with what those words mean. And so I've really taken on just writing out affirmations. If I'm like feeling in a funky mood or I'm feeling weird, I'll just sit down and write like a full page in my notebook and, just helping to kind of get the juices flowing in the right direction.
Yeah.
So that one's actually been huge for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So I wonder what the deal is with that, like the connection to actual handwriting, because it seems to me that like typing, like at the end of the day, you're still putting the words down. You know what I mean? You're making the characters, you're doing all of the things,
Yes.
Like I wonder what the difference is. Like,
I don't know, but I remember specifically when I watched this TED Talk, it was specifically about the actual writing. It was pen to paper, actually the way that you write, and it's kind of coming back to me a little bit more, taking the time to actually write changes. The point that the person was making in the TED Talk is that like you could actually use it as a tool to change your reality, like to actually change what's in your space by writing it out, because that that connection between the actual writing of it and the seeing of it will start to shift your world. And the point was like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg kind of thing? Like,
right.
is it the thinking it and the writing it, or like, what is it about that process? But it seems to shift your mind into a different state of consciousness. And like, I really, like, I'm pulling these bits and pieces from it, but I just remember being struck by this connection of like actually writing to it being, you know, something that you can really feel and something that actually changes the way that your brain is processing the information.
Right. Yeah. And so, but I wonder, well, I guess we could wonder all day about this, but I wonder if it's because you learned to write. You know what I mean? So writing was your first form of written communication. You know what I mean? So like kids today that are learning, all of their written communication is happening digitally.
It could be. I wonder. But this, I know the study, like the study he was talking about was specifically about getting kids to write in cursive or write, you know, actually write with pen to paper, and that they had some mode of measurement that they were testing. I like, again, I can't remember specifically, but I just remember dropping a pin on this idea that there was a strong connection, a strong correlation to like how your brain's functioning and like being able to write these words. So I wish I had more details, but it's a little foggy. But
Google it.
But the bottom line is, somewhere that got embedded into my brain, and so I planted the seed like, oh, when you are feeling something, write, you know, write, like change your mind through the written word. And it really has been effective for me to be able to just like write out a page. And I think I used to do this with morning pages. I know you've messed around with morning pages a little bit. Morning pages is a practice that the author of The Artist's Way, I forget her name. Anyway, she talks about just the power of getting everything out of your brain just on paper, just kind of like dropping, you know, getting the recycle bin and just downloading any thoughts, even if they're random thoughts or things that don't make sense. And so I did that for a long time. But after a while, I don't know, for some reason, it stopped being as effective for me. It stopped feeling as cathartic as I hoped it would, or something just shifted. But what I've done instead now is literally write out the affirmations, and it's powerful.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, the morning pages thing tapped out for me after like 2 weeks. Yeah, like in the beginning, it seemed like it was worth doing, and then after a while, it's like, this is a waste of time.
Yeah,
like,
and I think it can be really helpful in moments where you're frazzled and you have a lot going on. It can be super helpful to just dump it out. But I did find myself kind of dumping the same thing day in and day out. But it was like I was just looking for something to dump, and I was just like, I'm supposed to write something. I don't know what it is, so I guess I'll write about this thing. And I don't know, for whatever reason, it just stopped being as beneficial for me. But I do think there's power in the written word, in journaling, in actually, you know, putting pen to paper about what is there for you in your space. And for me, recently, it's been about not necessarily just documenting what's here for me, but actually actively creating what I want to be here for me.
Right.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So the other thing you and I were talking about earlier is how effective our playlists. Adam and I we've been doing some coaching with Cassie Parks, who you guys have heard on the podcast, and we've been doing some coaching with her around our money story and kind of money manifestation and all that good stuff. And she had us make a playlist that activated feelings of wealth, success, all those things. So Adam and I have both been using like music as a way to shift whatever's going on for us in the moment. We've both found it incredibly powerful when you actually have an intention for a playlist of music that you want to activate a certain feeling. So for me, my feeling is excited. And I found I put together a playlist of songs that activate excitement in me. And so if I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling nervous, I'm feeling whatever, I put this playlist on and it's amazing. Like it shifts my reality.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's been my experience too. Like it seems a little bit weird because you're like, well, whatever. I mean, I make playlists all the time, but you actually do, right? And then every time you play that playlist, it reminds you of that time that you made it, right?
Yeah.
So there's something about music. I mean, there just is. And when you are feeling a certain kind of music in a certain kind of mood, it's different, and it'll
Yeah.
call it back. You know, I mean, it's
yeah.
interesting.
Think about a DJ. I mean, this is what DJs do, right? They they feel the mood of the crowd, and then they play to the mood and the vibe that's there. And if you do it well, you take the audience on a journey, right? I mean, this is the whole thing. So I think for me, it's been kind of like actually consciously saying to myself, okay, what do I want this playlist to represent? What feeling do I want to activate for myself? How do I want to DJ my own experience? And creating it with that intention has been really powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Do it.
I love a playlist.
Try
man.
it.
I love a playlist. So that's kind of, these are like situational things. And the thing about this is like, you can activate these anytime. Like a playlist is not, if you're having a moment and you're feeling you're in a funk or whatever, you go put on your playlist. It takes no effort from you. Like it takes literally just pressing play.
Right.
And you can shift your whole world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And I mean, so I guess like a way that you could use this is just like you were saying, like, so the feeling that you're trying to encourage or activate or whatever is a feeling of excitement.
Yes.
But it could be anything, it's like, I want to be happy. And so if you imagine, you're like, okay, think about like a super, whatever a happy day is for you. If it's like sitting on the porch in the sunshine, you've got friends over and you're drinking iced tea or whatever, and you're like, that feels happy. Go make a playlist around that feeling. Like what kind of music would you be listening to if you were in that environment and all of that kind of stuff. And then just keep it on tap. And when you start to feel blue, throw that music on and see what happens.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I mean, I think kind of intuitively people know this, a little bit. It's like you have a party and you like, oh, like you intuitively kind of know this, but like actually activating it using it as a tool is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that this is the thing about all of this stuff. All this, we're living in the world of like life hacking. There's all these biohackers and life hackers and all this stuff, but like it's really simple. It's just kind of paying attention to when I give myself this input, what is my experience? What is the output after that? And if you kind of really just start to pay more attention to the management of the inputs you're giving yourself, you can really start to like hone in and rein in, a pretty profound, I guess, like control over your experience, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You've got your little hacks, for lack of a better term.
Yes. And of course, the meditations, the guided meditations that I do every morning, I also use those, whenever, if there's an actual thing that I'm dealing with, in our meditation challenge, there's actual topics. So for instance, one of them is a meditation on decisions. So if I have a decision that I need to make or something I'm grappling with, I can put that on and I can actually apply that to the situation and, get some guidance from myself through that decision-making process. And so, I mean, there's just so many great little tools that make a huge difference.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, like the common denominator amongst all of these things is it's something that just shifts you out of the loop that you're in.
Yes.
And that's that like that feed forward mechanism that I was talking about before. It's the same thing. You just need something that's going to disrupt the loop.
Yes.
And that, there's lots of different ways of doing it. So just pick a couple and keep them in your pocket and then just break them out as needed,
Exactly. Yeah. Cool. What about for you? Do you have any situational deployments?
I mean, breathing, I think, is probably the big one.
Yeah.
Like I think about, when things would get extra tense. I mean, so movement for sure. Like get up, walk around, shake it out. You know what I mean? Just like anything physical like that makes a really big difference. And if you're in a situation where you can't move a lot, like you can't just, take a quick walk outside and look at, whatever, then the breathing is definitely what's up.
Yeah.
And
totally.
I mean, and it doesn't really even matter. Like I've tinkered around with Wim Hof stuff, the PRI stuff that I was talking about before, box breathing, all of those things work.
Yes.
So it's just a matter of picking one. And I mean, and it can even just be the 10 deep breaths.
Yes.
And, just pick something and do it. It's like, it'll just work. And then there's another thing that I do, and this used to happen like back in the day. I remember when I was an engineer, like just started driving fire engines. And the first time that I had to come to Los Angeles for a fire, it was pretty stressful. Driving a fire engine in LA traffic was like not something that I was like really up to speed on, you know? And like my middle of my back, like the tension would just develop and it would just get tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter, and I just would like breathe through it and just think about expanding in the thoracic spine, just visualizing all of that stuff kind of going away. Mm-hmm. And it really helped. It was like, oh, okay, now you can relax and stuff. Because, it did get to the point where you're like, pretty intense.
Yeah, totally.
So it was, I've been doing that for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that, the point is like, this is just what this journey is all about, like continuing to, develop your arsenal of tools and, to give yourself the go-to things that help you to buffer the experience, and not only just buffer it, but like guide it in the direction you want it to go.
Right.
Because I think that's the next level of this thing is like, okay, we always talk about, having headroom or, headspace or being able to buffer, but like there's a next level beyond that, which is okay, like let's buffer and now let's redirect and get this thing back in the direction we want it going.
Yeah.
And that is the next level of this whole situation. That's the
Right.
next level of, living authentically or, manifesting your best potential. This is what it's all about.
Yeah, totally. So to say what you're saying in another way, we talk about using these tools as a correction to get back to zero, right? So
Right.
like if something's taking away from your experience in the day, or it's negatively impacting you, we can use these things to get you back to zero. But once you're pretty good at that, there is definitely a way to go +1.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To take it in the opposite direction. And the example I would use with that is, let's say, your business, or, well, it could be business, social life, whatever, revolves around needing to show up for people when you go to a party. You want you to be there. You want to put your best foot forward, and you want to be, charismatic and entertaining, and and so like, well, actually, we'll make it about business because I think that makes it a little more clear. You get clients by meeting people and talking to them and resonating with them and showing them who you are.
Right.
And so if a social situation or whatever's going on in your day has got you stressed out and a little wigged out, and now you have to go and perform and be on in this environment, that can be pretty tough for people, And so if you come into something and you're faking it because you've got all of this stuff going on in the background, but you have to come across, as this person,
Right. Yeah.
People can tell.
Oh, totally.
They're like, whoa, this person's desperate, and like that's
Yeah.
the feeling that it comes around is like this inauthenticity shows up to most people as desperation.
Right.
And nobody likes to be around desperate people. Like
Right.
that's not, it's off-putting because you're like, whoa, what's going on over here? Like I'm just over here being myself, and this person's like really
Reaching.
Yes,
yeah.
And that like always feels weird to folks,
Yes.
So in that circumstance, it's like you need to get your shit straight.
Yes.
And just be you.
Yes.
You're not trying to be somebody else, but you need to get back square to where you are, and then communicate at that like +1 level,
Yeah.
So.
And this applies to everything, because it's not just about like your mental state. Obviously it is about your emotional state and your well-being and all this stuff, but like when you think about your diet, one of the biggest things that people have a hard time doing is, not eating the foods that they know are bad for them, or not indulging too much, or not overeating, or whatever these things are that actually, prevent you from realizing your most ideal physical form, are the same exact things. You can deploy these same methods in those moments where you're staring at the menu and you're deciding if you want a bowl of nachos or a healthy salad. You can deploy these things in those moments too, to get you back into center, get you back focused on like who you authentically want to be in the world. So all of this stuff ties together. And I think that this is why for us, like, having this holistic wellness company, so to speak, has been important, because these are the tools that if you can master, you can apply to any of these realms of your life, and you can realize your highest potential in whatever area you direct it at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully it's like all of the areas.
Yes. Hopefully it is all the areas.
But yeah, and if it's not, it's not. But there's what we really want for people is that they have the tools in order to do these things. It's like if you're not super concerned about being a stellar athlete, whatever.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. But I don't want you to skip out on that because you don't feel like you can, or you don't understand how to do it.
Right.
And the same thing with fat loss. If you don't want to be 4% body fat as a dude or 20% body fat as a woman, who cares, you know? But if you aren't doing it because you don't feel as though you can or you don't know how, that's problematic.
Right.
And the same thing with this stress piece we're talking about. If you are socially awkward and you don't go out because you're socially awkward, that's a problem. You know, if you choose to stay home and watch Netflix because that's your jam, great.
Right.
You know, but we want people to feel as though that they can interact and play in this world that we have. And the ways that we can do that are physically and emotionally. And then obviously the nutrition and exercise piece just sort of supports all of that.
Yes,
you know?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, next question. What is one thing that someone should do every day? So I think the point is like, if there's just one thing, you know, this is the, like, I can't really focus on a lot of things, but like, what should be my number one priority?
You should sleep every day.
Yes. Sleep. Get your sleep dialed in.
Yep.
100%.
Yep. And it's, you know, and we talk about this all the time, and there's going to be plenty of people out there that are like, I sleep like crazy and I'm still fat. And you're like, right. But this is you asked about the one thing and you're already doing that.
Yes.
So now you get to move on to the next thing.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you can't get your sleep dialed in, then everything else that you're doing is going to be dramatically more difficult.
Totally.
And I don't mean just like, oh, well, I woke up, or, you know, I didn't sleep last night, so now I'm insulin resistant, so my physiology is working against me from a fat storage perspective. Yes, that's true, but the also your ability to do the right thing, to make the hard decision in the moment is 100% regulated by your energy and your body's like ability to cope. Yeah. And if you're not sleeping, that's the first shit that goes.
Totally.
You know what I mean? It's like and we've talked about this multiple times, but sleep deprivation and alcohol consumption are run parallel when it comes to decision making. Yeah. They're the same kind of thing. So when you think about you know, oh, I went out and had too many drinks and made a bad decision, and I ate that pizza, you know, or whatever. It's the same damn thing if you're like 72 hours sleep deprived and you just smash whatever's in front of you. You don't have the energy to make the right decision, make the hard decision in that moment. And that's just how your brain works, you know? So I think there's some confusion around that sometimes. People are like, well, it's no big deal. I can get by on this much sleep. I'm recovering. My workouts seem good. But then you get on this like bad decision-making train, you know? Yeah. And you know, obviously there's outliers who crush life on 4 hours of sleep. I still think they could probably be doing better in life with more, but I don't know. But
yeah. So so past sleep, if you're going to give, so sleep's a no-brainer. What are you going to give? One more thing that people should be doing every day.
Movement. Got to move. Got to accumulate 2 hours worth of movement every single day. Mm-hmm. And you know, and that should probably be accumulated. You know, I mean, it's fine if the only option you have is to go out and do 2 hours of something. That's probably fine. But just if you think about the way your body moves, it's not just about the movement. You know what I mean? It's not just about walking 10,000 steps or whatever it is. Right. It's about not having these long durations, these long periods of sedentary behavior. Mm-hmm. So, you know, if let's just say you are in bed for 8 hours out of the day, then you've got 16 hours left over. And if you do all of your 2 hours of exercise in one spot, then you're looking at 14 hours of like relatively sedentary behavior. And if you think about it, like here's a kind of compressed example people could probably get their heads around: a 14-hour flight where you're just locked. You know, you're wrecked when you get out of that. And most people would say that. They're like, oh my God, a 14-hour flight, that seems terrible. But in reality, most people on a daily basis are in that same situation. Mm-hmm. They're locked up in some cast position for at least 14 hours a day. Right. And so if you can break that up and accumulate your 2 hours of exercise, maybe it's an hour in the gym, and then it's 20 minutes every few hours of moving, now it's an entirely different world. You know, because not only are you actually getting the physical movement, but you're not settling in to those sedentary positions.
Yeah. And again, you can really start to like tie these all of these themes together in the sense that like you have to have your go-to tools, your go-to ways of getting that movement in. So the same way that you have your go-to things to change your state of mind, you've got to have your go-to movement strategies. So, you know that you work from 8 to 5 every day, then you know that like at least 4 times today, I need to walk a lap around the building, or, I need to, when I stop at the grocery store, I know I need to park at this furthest end. Like you've got to build these strategies and these things into your life, because if you're trying to save it all up and deploy it at once, it just doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way for our physical being. It doesn't work that way for our mental well-being. All of this stuff, you've got to have it's those little moments. It's the time where you have a split second to make a decision, and you quickly have that arsenal of tools where you're like, great, this is where I deploy my, I do my 15 squats every time I go to the bathroom tool.
Right.
Like these are the things, and this is what we're really trying to drive home with you guys, is that like you've got to create these systems and these things that are just default settings for you.
Right. Yeah, it's just how you operate.
Yes.
And just, to not to belabor the point too much, but if you just think about our how we evolved, it was it was frequent movement.
Right.
I mean, and that's just what we do. It's part of it's so ingrained in what we do. And we were talking about this last week with Daryl Edwards. It's like we evolved to move.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like
Yes.
movement wasn't part of the mix. And we're these super, versatile monkeys that can move in these ways.
Right.
It's like, no, the movement's required. Like the way that our physiology works, our body's systems rely upon that movement in order to do what they're going to do, So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool.
Importante.
Okay, so last question. How do you get yourself out of a funk when you've fallen in a rut?
That's a good question. So I think, there's a couple of different things, and I guess they probably all sort of tie together. So for me, there's like 3 different kinds of ruts. There's like a nutritional rut, there's a strength and conditioning rut, and then there's just like depression.
Right.
You know what I mean? Where I'm just like,
Right.
nothing sounds good. It's
Yeah.
the meh zone. So, and interestingly, like either nutrition or the strength and conditioning piece can kind of help with that depression piece. It's like you just got to do something, like anything, whatever will get you outside and like around people
Right.
will usually be like the stimulating factor for that for me. But if I'm in a funk from a nutrition perspective or a strength and conditioning perspective, I'll go find a new program. I'll go find one of the coaches that I follow and like mentors, if you will. Go look at what they're doing, find something new that they're doing, and dive into the reasons behind their programming and like what they're up to. And that almost always works for me.
So quickly though, what if you're a chronic program hopper, meaning you don't actually ever realize any success in any one program, but you're always hopping from program to program?
So but I think that's a different thing, right? So like if you're, because I think there's a difference between being bored and being in a funk, right?
But I just want to make that I want to distinguish it, because I could see folks out there being like, oh, okay, cool. But but you have to distinguish, like if you're the kind of person that's constantly hopping from program to program,
you should stop
then this
doing that.
might not be the solution. Then finding a new program may not be the solution.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, that's a good point, because there are people who do that, and they just get bored with what's going on, right? They're like, I'm going to go to this class, and then I'm going to go to this class, I'm going to go to this class. And at the end of the day, if all you're trying to do is accumulate those 2 hours of movement in a day, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, totally.
But if you have a goal, if you're like, I want to put on mass,
right,
and you program hop, it's not going to work.
Well, or if you don't actually ever follow through, you just like seek out the program, you go one time or you do one thing, and then you kind of fall off the wagon, and then you go, oh, that program didn't work for me, I'm going to find something else. So like, there's that side of it too.
Well, yeah, totally. Yeah. So, and I mean, but that's kind of it's kind of a different thing, right? So like, if people get where that becomes annoying is when people will say it. They're like, oh, I tried that and it didn't work.
Well,
and you're like, no, you didn't even fucking try it. Like, you did not actually do this.
Yes,
like you didn't get into this at all, right? So yeah, from a coach's perspective, that is super annoying.
Yeah.
Where you're like, hey, dude, you can't shit talk something if you didn't actually do it.
Yes.
And you're like, no, I was keto for 6 months, and you're like, were you? You know, I mean, like, did you? Is this really what went on? I mean, actually, that's probably not even a great example because there's so many variations on that. But yeah.
But yes, and I just wanted to make that, like, I just wanted to distinguish that, though, because I do think I agree with you finding a new program, and I'm like queen of trying new things, new sports, new activities. I mean, you know, I'm like hooked on roller skating right now. Like, I'm constantly looking for new ways to invigorate my excitement about my movement and like to find new ways of like getting excited about it again. And I think that's a great cue, but I just want to like...
Right. So, okay, so let's dive into this a little bit more though, because I think what I'm hearing from you is totally different than what I'm talking about.
Okay, cool.
I think it comes down to how you operate. So for me, this works because I stick with a program until it's over. You know, I have 12 weeks minimum. You know, I mean, those are the kind of programs that I get involved in, is something that's like, you know, 12 to 16 weeks. And then at the end of that program, I'm like, all right, well, you know, now what am I going to do? And I go find something new, you know? So yeah, I'm not the ever present looking for the next thing in order to motivate me to do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally. That's why I want to just distinguish that for the audience, though, because I do think what you do is awesome. Yeah, and I feel like I do that as well. I do something for a long while, and then I'm like, oh, okay, I'd like to explore a new something to be excited about. Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Which is different.
It's just the frequency of how often that happens for us is pretty low.
Yes.
Like 3 times a year, you know, kind of a thing, not 3 times a month.
Exactly.
And that's where, the 3 times a month thing can be problematic. So but again, what I would say to those folks is if you're in this situation where you can't stick with a program, or you get bored with it, then you don't really know what it is you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. Like I would say that once you have a focus of what exactly it is you're trying to do, then that becomes a lot easier.
Right.
It's when you have a little bit of like focus ADD that it gets tough. And it's actually super common, you know,
totally.
And you hear it all the time when you say, hey, so what is it that you're trying to do? Oh, I want to gain muscle and lose fat. And you're like, okay, sounds good. And I also want to run a half marathon. And I'm interested in trying the keto diet. And I hear meditating is cool. And you're like, yeah. All right, you know. Yeah. But there's a lot of different things going on there, right. You know. So if as a trainer or a coach, you take that person, you're like, okay, well, meditation, great, that's going to fit with all of these things. But then you try to write a program for them that's going to accomplish everything they're trying to do, where they're going to try to, you know, put on some mass and lose some body fat and still also run this half marathon they signed up for or whatever. You're not really doing the people a huge favor. I mean, there are some outliers out there that train that way, like the hybrid athlete folks, Alex Viada, however you say that, and his guys. I mean, these guys are like half marathon running power lifters. You know what I mean? But it's pretty damn specific. Like almost nobody is going to follow those programs, you know, to a T in order to get to that window. So for the most part, it comes to this point of like trying to find this singular focus and say, and this is where some coaching can be really helpful, is to say, all right, well, let's talk about the priorities here. You know, so we can run through a couple of different variations on that. So let's say the person comes in and says, I want to put on muscle, lose body fat, and be super cardio guy so I can run a half marathon. So you look at this guy and you're like, well, you're about 20% body fat, you know, so we don't have a ton of fat to lose, but there's some there. But you look really weak, you know what I mean? Like you're a skinny fat kind of guy. Mm-hmm. And they're like, move terribly, you know. I mean, you do a basic, simple assessment. You watch them walk, and you're like, yeah, like the most important thing for you right now is to get stronger and put on some muscle, and then everything else is going to get easier, right? Right. So you can help them with that focus, and it becomes difficult in a lot of ways, especially when you start trying to, you know, build to something. A lot of folks really want to run, you know, and they want to run hard, and you know, even now with all of the validation out there around the max aerobic function, like the Maffetone method and all this stuff of like really just slowing it down and staying out of the black hole. The science on that it's solid. I mean, it's like, and actually now that you think about it, it's frankly obvious that this is how it works, you know, but it's still really hard to rein people in on that. But you get that focus And then you start to work on that. And then once they've got some muscle mass and they're a little bit more developed, then now, okay, now let's take a look at this body fat piece, because likely once you've got mass, you start doing some cardio stuff, the body fat's going to come along with it, right? So there's ways of parsing this stuff out and getting to it. But if you try to do it all, then it's going to feel like nothing's working, because frankly, you're not really optimized for any one of these sort of focuses. Yeah, it's like you got to pick a lane. And so when nothing feels like it's working, because you're not getting the results that you want as fast as you want, that's where the indecision starts to creep in. You're like, well, maybe this guy just doesn't know what he's talking about, and I'll find this other coach that's going to tell me that he can do all three of these things at once. And so I think that's where a lot of people wind up is, maybe the program they're following is not stellar, or, well, I shouldn't say not stellar, but it's not right for them, you know, and I think that's what happens a lot. You know, there's very few bad programs. There's bad coaching, and that's what I would say is like the wrong program for the wrong person. You know, it's just like, it's not all, got to do it right. You know, it could be a great program for me and it's not going to work for you. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but it's like what it comes down to is like there's a lot of different reasons why people can get into this position of feeling bored with what they're doing,
right?
And then seeking out this other piece. And I think what I would ask people to do is to get real serious in their mind about what it is that they want, and stop believing that there's a magic pill / program / anything that's going to get everything that they want at the same time. It just it doesn't work, you know. I mean, and the only, like, the obvious, I think, argument against that is like somebody who's super out of shape. You can do anything you do is gonna improve your strength, it's going to improve your cardiovascular endurance, and it's going to improve your body fat, right? So cast that aside. Now you're getting focused on what it is that people want to do. Once you get to that point, you just got to pick a lane and stick with it until you can switch lanes, and then stick with that, and then switch lanes and stick with that, and then start over again. Yeah. You know, I mean, this is just how it works.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So you kind of tackled it from a space of how do you get stuck, or how do you get out of a rut if you're bored with your program? I'm going to actually tackle it from, like, if you are depressed or you're just in a funk and you're just like, you have a lack of motivation to really just do anything or get involved in anything, and you're just finding yourself really struggling with getting back in the game at all.
Right. So I want to add one caveat. So it's not just boredom with your program.
Right.
I mean, just in general, if you're like, I'm just not feeling the fitness thing.
Yes. Okay.
Right?
Yes.
You know what I mean? So that could be like nutrition, whatever. It's time to find a new thing to get excited about.
Got it. Yeah. Yes. Awesome. And I will just add one thing to that, which is, you know, if you're finding yourself and you're looking out there and you're like, but none of these programs are making me excited. Like, I'm looking at everything, but not one of them is making me want to sign up and join and get in the game again. Then I would say it's time to go have some fun. Like, honestly, it's time to go out and just be in the vibration of fun. Be in the vibration of people and things that are uplifting to you. Because really, at that point, what you are experiencing is a little bit of depression and lackluster for life. And so when it comes to that is where it's just time to go insert yourself into places that are going to uplift you. And, you know, obviously, this is one of the main reasons that we have our events, our live events and retreats, is because we know how important it is to actually go and be with people who can help raise your vibration and really get you uplifted and back into your motivation and back into, you know, in alignment with the reasons why you want to be fit, or you want to lose body fat, or you want to look good. Because if you're not happy, those things just start to dim in you. They don't have a luster. And so you've got to, like, find a way to bring back the luster and your zest for life. And so if that means going to comedy shows and just laughing your ass off, just getting some laughter, or, you know, finding a group of people that like to go on Saturday hikes, just, you've got to go insert yourself into the experience of fun.
Right.
And don't even worry about it necessarily being a training goal at that point. Just go raise your vibration. Like, again, this is what we're talking about with the playlists and the, and the meditation, all things like, but when you're just feeling sadness or depression or just like, I can't get back into my motivation, just go have some fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Go
Literally.
do something.
Yeah.
Which is probably really tough.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Just what's the next thing? Well, I got to take a shower.
Yes.
And then after that, I'm going to get dressed.
Yes.
And then, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's just like, you just have to chunk stuff out. I mean, it's just like a tough workout. It's the discipline of working through the system.
Yes.
It's like plan the work. No. How does it go? Yeah.
Plan
Plan the work, work the
plan.
plan.
Yeah.
And that is like, that is just like fire department command bullshit 101. You know what I mean? You're
Right.
just like, you plan the work, you work the plan, you stick to it, and you do this, you do that, and you're like, but at the end of the day, it really does work.
Yes.
It's how you get through things that are really freaking hard is you chunk them out and you just keep marching. And that's
Yes.
that's like the differentiation between willpower and discipline. The willpower is to do it all at once. Discipline is to use your systems that you've developed for yourself to take it bite by bite and get through it.
Yes.
And that's that's teachable, and that's the thing that I think we're really coming around to in what we do is that we can teach you how to be disciplined about each of these areas of your life. And the willpower, relying on willpower or your own internal wherewithal to just do these things, it doesn't work for a lot of people.
Yeah.
For some it does, and those are the people who are always like, I don't know what you're talking about. I never have a problem with eating donuts, or you know what I mean? Like these are the people that you're all like, must be good genes, or whatever it is, right? And they just, it's just not an issue.
Right.
But for those who it is an issue for, there's systems
Yes.
for developing this and working your way through it. And it's a muscle. You just got to exercise that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to kind of layer one other piece on that, like, you're talking about when it's difficult to go out and have fun when you're in that place, if you can't think of something that sounds fun or like, is going to be in that high vibration, just think of a time when you were happy. What were you doing? Who were you with? Just, you don't have to create something new. You can look in the archives. When was a time where I enjoyed myself? Try to go be in that situation or as close to it again.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, again, where the plan and the discipline of like, okay, what does it take to get myself there? And chunk it out and get yourself, as close to those memories or those experiences of enjoyment. And, just take some time to enjoy your life, because if you do lose that sense of enjoyment, that zest for life, it really, all of this stuff becomes so much harder. It becomes such a rigorous, like you were talking about, it becomes, just willpower, and you're just white knuckling it through. But if you can reconnect with the excitement, the zest for life, the joy, the fun, then it does become, again, just about the systems and executing on them.
Yeah. That's what's up. Well, and you don't, well, I don't know. It really is true. Like that's how you do it. And I think people can get disillusioned in the systems and discipline approach to things, because it's like, really? I thought life was like spontaneous, and the times that I was having the most fun in my life was this like spontaneous thing that you can't replicate. And you're like, well, I mean, there's definitely those too.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff does materialize. But if what you're trying to do is jumpstart your car to get to the party, that's where you know what I mean? That's where this discipline comes in.
And the spontaneity is so much more well received when it's juxtaposed to the structure.
Right.
Because without that structure, there is no spontaneity. There's just chaos.
It's just random shit.
Yeah, you're just in chaos. So like actually, if spontaneity is what you want, then that means that you have an active decision to say, I'm going to, reject the format that I'm used to. I'm going to reject my, my typical system, and I'm going to allow myself this other, way of interacting with the situation. And you have to have the discipline in order to create that.
Yeah.
And
that's a really interesting point, actually, because that, especially coming from you, airy fairy, all over the map, airy fairy, but it's really true.
Yeah.
It's like if you don't have the two things. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. No, it really is true. And you do, I think it even says it in one of my meditations, like we enjoy ourselves, we surrender to things more wholly, and we trust in them and enjoy them more wholly when we have a support system or a structure that we know is in place,
Right.
and then we can surrender to the moment, because we know that, like, if we surrender to that moment, it doesn't mean we're going to be lost in an abyss of chaos.
Right.
It means we can fully surrender to that moment. And that is a powerful skill, and that's a powerful awareness to have about your life.
Yeah. Bam.
Bam.
So there's something I've been or do you have another question?
No, that's it.
Okay.
Those are all our
So there's
questions.
something I've been thinking about just with regard to like what it is at high levels that we're doing. And it's the Venn diagram, right? The 3 concentric circles, or there's like some overlap in there. And I really think that there's this piece of, at the highest level for us, that there's this piece of like your physical well-being, your self-mastery or mental well-being, and then what you choose to do with it. And like those are the 3 circles.
Yeah.
And it's like it really becomes about that. So if you have, let me see if I can break this down in an example. So if you're missing one piece of that, right? If you have the physical body and you have this, like, all these ideas about what to do with that physical body, but you're not there from like the self-mastery perspective, like you don't have your finances in order. So you can't go do the things that you would like to do with your physical body, right?
Right.
Or the opposite is true, and you've got all the money in the world and these cool ideas, but you don't have the physical body to pull that stuff off. Or you've got your life mastered and you're physically cool, but you don't have a faintest clue as to what to do with it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it really takes all 3 of these pieces to kind of come together in the middle, in this, like, the richness of life seems to show up there.
Yes.
Right. And that's what we want for people.
Totally.
You know what I mean? We want to nurture that and like support those 3 aspects of folks' lives such that they can spend more time in that sweet spot in the middle,
Yeah, we talk about this all the time. We say words like life mastery or living your badass life. I mean, this is the sweet spot. That is where living your badass life exists. And if you're in there, if you're only 1 foot into one part of the diagram, the Venn diagram, but the other, foot is out and you're sort of like in and out of that ability, this is where some of these tools can make a huge difference to push you into that sweet spot, to push you deeper into this richness of your life. And you're right, that is what we want for people. It's like 100% what we're committed to. And, I think this is why we keep refining our programs, we keep refining our message, we keep refining these things so that we can help you to hear in us and connect in us what it is that we're trying to help you to achieve, and so we keep, explaining it in different ways or offering different things. Adam has his new fat loss program because we just realized that, like, there's a whole group of people out here who have mastered some of the strength part of it. They've got a good idea about, how to lift some weight or how to move some weight around or work out, and they've been with us for a while, but they just haven't got that last piece of fat loss.
Right.
And it's like, that's an example, but this exists in a lot of different ways, and we just want to keep helping you to understand what are the things that you can hone in and create those last pieces that are holding you back from your highest expression.
Yeah. Yeah. And to that end, if you're interested in the fat loss program, there's men's and women's, so they run separate.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, there's differences.
Yes, there are
between men's and women's.
Yeah.
You heard it here first, folks. So there's some fundamental differences there, and we also find that it's just a little more comfortable for folks to be kind of in those separate groups, because there's all kinds of weird stuff that comes up, especially once you start talking fat loss.
Yeah.
So there's 2 separate groups. There's men's, there's women's. It's a specific program for fat loss, and it's not just the last 10 pounds. And if you're interested in that, or if you think that sounds like it's cool, you can schedule a call with me, 15 minutes for free, and we'll just see if it's fit for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kicked it off last week with the first group call, and there's already pounds being lost.
It's happening.
It's happening. Yeah. You've already kicked out 3 or 4 programs, and you've got people in there, and you're like, it's amazing because I was in here listening to Adam's first call, and I just realized like what a special gift he has for this, and what a special experience it is for him to share this piece, because you've never really been in a position to be able to coach people this intimately and like, week on week, and really create this very precise thing. So it's really cool to see you doing that, and to see people already experiencing results when they're only a week in.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing. Like I said, the goal here is for people to be self-reliant.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I don't want you to have a coach forever.
Yeah, totally.
I want you to understand how this works.
Yes.
And this is, this fat loss piece is our first chunk that we're going to take. But after that, we're going to be getting you self-reliant in your strength and conditioning, and we're going to be getting you self-reliant in your life mastery pieces. I mean, we want to be churning out high functioning folks. You know what I mean? Like getting people to that sweet spot.
Yes.
That's what we want.
Because ultimately, we just want you to come on vacation with us and have a badass time.
At the end of the day.
So we got to get you guys ready for all this awesomeness.
Yeah. At the end of the day, what we really want is to take you on vacation.
We want to take you and do cool shit. So let's get fit, let's get sexy, let's get happy, and let's go do cool shit.
Yes.
So hope you guys got something out of this today. And, if anything, we hope that maybe you just grabbed one or two little things that maybe you want to start integrating into your life, and that you want to start really, incorporating in order to change your human experience.
That's what's up.
Cool. We'll see you guys next week. And we love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.